Hello, my name is Aubrey. I wanted to share my experience with Kundalini therapy. Um, so I'll share a little bit about kind of what led up to this point, why I decided to do ketamine therapy, and then also a little bit about my experience during ketamine therapy. So um, I had been dealing with anxiety, but mostly CPTSD symptoms, and so it's kind of hard to explain up to this point because it was such a years long type of thing. So basically, it was kind of a combination of a Kundalini awakening, which had been going on for about 8 years, but only for about half that time, about 4 years, it's really accelerated and dredged up a lot of the really deep, heavy stuff that I needed to deal with. Which also led to a religious awakening. I was always a very, very religious person. And because of that, I started to bring up some questions that my family and friends did not like, and which shined a light on their shadow and things that they didn't want to confront. And so I became the scapegoat, lucky me. And so that losing my community was very traumatic for me. Very, very, very traumatic. On top of also learning about all of this religious stuff that there were a lot of lies that were being told by the leadership. And so I went to the leadership and I was naive me. I thought that maybe if I told them what was some things that I found out, I thought, well, perhaps they need to be informed about it and they'll be able to fix it and change their narrative about things. But that's not what happened. And years of talking to this leadership and them, not in these words, but in their intention, they basically just said that honesty is not their priority and keeping themselves in power was the most important thing for them. And so they knew about the things that I was bringing up. They weren't willing to fix it. It does, like, nobody can deny that they were being dishonest in their narrative about these things. And so, anyway, they basically just ghosted me. And so I was dealing with handling a faith reconstruction because I haven't completely left my religion. I have a difficult time going because of I deal a lot with panic attacks when I do go, and my body just does not react well at all when I go. So at this point, I am not able to attend. I do sometimes, but my family does attend. There's still a lot of things I really love about the religion. I am still healing from the ecclesiastical abuse that I experienced in my communication with the leadership in my church. So dealing with that, and on top of my changing beliefs around religion, which was such a huge part of my life, and then losing my community because of the questions I had around that. Like, it was completely earth-shattering to me. And so I was experiencing this culmination of all of this trauma that I was trying to process through. And I became, you know what, I didn't want to be here. And I told my family members about it, and they mocked me and they yelled at me, and it was horrific. It was absolutely horrific. And they blamed me for my pain, and it was just really bad. And I decided, I was like, okay, I'm just going to give them some time because obviously this is very hard for them. Understandably, it was very hard for me. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them patience and grace, and I'm just going to, hopefully some time will heal these wounds. And I tried to bring these things back up with them and the abuse got worse and worse and worse, unfortunately. And so I have had to remove myself completely from family and friends. And I do have some community that are not the same. You know, our relationships are not the same as they used to be. But luckily, I've gotten new people in my life that are supporting me, and people that have been in my life for a very long time that have changed. Like, they weren't supportive at first, but now they are. And so I've been very lucky that way. But that was very traumatic as well, and it was a process to go through, because I did almost lose those relationships too. So that is the CPTSD, the root of the things that I was going through. And I'm not saying this to brag in any way, shape, or form. I have just noticed, it's something that I have observed, that I am very resilient, very, very, very resilient. And I think that's because of several things. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know why. I'm both emotionally and physically resilient. When I broke my arm at 10 years old, the doctor's like, she could give birth to 10 babies. You know, obviously he wasn't saying at that time, but like, my pain tolerance was so high that he's like, she could give birth to 10 babies without an epidural. And that's not true, actually. My epidural didn't work with my first baby, and it was a very hard experience. So in that case, I was not prepared for that. If I had actually prepared for it, maybe it'd be a different story, but I was not prepared for it. So, and then I have just noticed that emotionally, I tend to be much more resilient, and I can handle not only my pain, my emotional pain, but other people's pain, and just sit with them and be with them. And so, it was a surprise to me that this was affecting me so deeply. And I had to deal with that. And so it was a shock to me when I was experiencing these flashbacks and these triggers that I could not get a handle on. I couldn't get out of the hurricane of the trauma that I was experiencing, the flashbacks, that, like, I could not calm down my nervous system once I was in those experiences, no matter. And I am very, very well versed on mental health, on self-care, on energy healing. Like, I have so many tools in my belt. There were, like, I tried breath work, I tried tapping, I tried just regular energy healing that I do on myself. I've done, you know, massage, I've taken baths, and I've grounded, and I've done acupressure and acupuncture, sorry. Acupuncture was actually one thing that really, really helped, but it wasn't very permanent. It would come back, it would help for a few days, and then it would kind of undo itself. And so that's where I was at. I felt completely helpless, and I was so hesitant to go on medications because I didn't, like, on a base level, I wasn't depressed. I was quite happy, and I was living a good life, but it was these triggers that would just spiral me into this deep, dark hole that was just so hard to get out of. And it happened often enough, probably at least weekly, if not a couple times a week. And it was interfering with my everyday life. So, I had heard about ketamine therapy, and it was something that was kind of on my radar, and I was just like, I don't know, like, I wanted to continue all these things that I was trying, because every once in a while things would work for a little bit longer, and like the triggers and the flashbacks there would kind of be a space in between each one, and then they would come back to be quicker and quicker. And so I would have this false hope, and then I would just kind of fall into the spiral again. And I got to the point where I had a hard time even helping myself. Like, anyway, it was a very difficult place to be. So I decided that I was going to look into it. I had an evaluation done. He really pushed for SSRIs. I didn't want to try it because my baseline was really good. Just needed to and I went to therapy too. I want to, like, I covered all my bases. Like, it was just medication I didn't want to try because of several reasons, and it's not something I would ever discourage anyone from doing. It just did not feel right for me. So I decided that I was going to do this ketamine therapy. And my first experience ended in a K-hole, if you're familiar with that. And I think I will make a different video about that. So the nurse practitioner that's over the clinic that I went to, he put me on the higher end of the range for my weight. So I think that he's probably used to people who are on medications, who maybe drink alcohol. I was raised Mormon. I don't drink alcohol. I was a pharmacy technician. It's not like I'm against medications, but I really value natural remedies. And so natural remedies work for me. I use flower essences. I use homeopathy. I use herbs. And so those things, like when I'm really in a crisis, they pull me out of the crisis. They don't heal me from ever going back into the crisis, but I have a way out. And so I've never felt like, anyway, so I don't know if it's like, so my tolerance for the medication is quite low, apparently. And I went into a K-hole. And so it was a strange first experience. And I was bound and determined. I was like, why would anyone want to experience this? Why? Like, I did not understand. I didn't see the value in it. But here's what happened afterward. Okay, first let me share my nervous system. I just kept on explaining it, that it just felt so broken. It felt so broken. That feeling that you get when you sit down in a chair after a long day or lay in your bed getting ready to go to sleep, and that feeling of just like relaxing. I did not experience that for almost like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. My nervous system was so heightened, it felt so broken. Not only that, but I experienced like I couldn't, it had to do with my breath. It's like I couldn't get a deep enough breath. It's like whatever happens in my brain or whatever that tells me that I have enough oxygen, that wasn't working or something. And I constantly felt like I had to think about taking a breath. It was constantly on my mind, and I constantly had that feeling of like I'm not getting enough oxygen. It was absolutely horrible. It was so it just wore on my mind and my mental health so much. So I needed to add that as part of, before I actually go into the experience. And so I'm going to make a different video about my K-hole experience. But after that experience happened, I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this again. It's so weird. And the nurse practitioner said, I think we gave you a little too much. It's an anesthetic. Like, it could put you to sleep if you got enough. And I was kind of in between that, like, therapeutic state and the anesthetic state, to where I felt completely disconnected from my body. Okay, so I was kind of, after that experience, I tossed my cookies. Oh my gosh, on the way home. Luckily I had something to catch it. I didn't drive. I was driven home by my husband, and I had to sleep it off for like 3 hours. Like, it wasn't a fun experience, okay? But what I realized after was my nervous system was calm. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this And it wasn't immediate. It was just kind of something that happened over the next like 24 hours and then the next days. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it did something. It completely like reset my nervous system and calmed down my nervous system. I was like, okay, it's fair. Like, I know that the experience that I had wasn't the normal experience. So I'm going to try it again. We're going to go as low of a dose as, like for my body weight. And we're going to kind of just see what happens. If I experience absolutely nothing, I'm actually okay with that. And then if I decide to do it again, then we'll go up a little bit so I can kind of like level out and see what happens. So went in and they tell me to just listen to like music without words. And so in listening to meditation music, I go into it. And then it felt like I was just in this kind of time warp type thing. It felt like time was going really fast in a way. It was kind of strange. It's hard to experience, but time was just very different. And then it felt like it just felt like a deep meditation. And I was totally expecting like this profound experience where I like had a vision or realization about something, about my trauma or things that I had experienced. And it wasn't any of that. Even though like my body was incapacitated, I could not move. And I knew it was working. I didn't K-hole the second time. But it felt like I was in like that floaty state that they kind of told me I would be in, but I didn't have any profound experiences, and I didn't see like the geometric shapes that they said I might see, or, like there was nothing. It would just felt like a deep meditation that I could do at home. But again, I was done. I came home, I slept it off, and it felt like my nervous system was just one step more relaxed and reset in a big way. And I'm like, okay, let's try it again. Let's do it again. I did it a third time, kind of pretty much the same experience. And then the fourth time, pretty much the same experience. So I didn't have any very profound visions or experiences having to like do with the actual trauma that I've experienced, or like I expected to maybe kind of like have an experience with family members, or, like be able to kind of talk with them in my mind. And I don't know, I had expectations that certain things would happen, and nothing really happened. I have some theories about that. And I think that because I've been an energy healer and I've worked through so much of my trauma, not only that, but I really love to go into, like, I love to go deep. I'm like, if I can find a well where I'm like gonna cry my eyes out in order to work through some deep repressed trauma, I am gonna go head first into that. Like, that's the stuff that I live for. And so I don't think that's a common experience for most people. I think that people tend to bury all of their stuff, and the Kundalini has brought everything up for me to deal with. And so I think that is why my experience wasn't very profound or crazy. But the thing that happened that I am so incredibly thankful for, and I would do over again if I had to, was the way it reset my nervous system. And it did help me reframe things so that I haven't been triggered by family stuff for a long time. I mean, a long time is relative, right? For weeks, 5 weeks or so, when I, considering things that, how frequent the triggers were weekly or several times a week, like it's been a huge relief to be able to experience this. So, one really big downfall, honestly, this is probably the biggest reason why I stopped doing it. If I had been having profound experiences, I probably would have continued. But the fact that I wasn't having profound experiences, and then also on top of this negative effect of I had to pee so bad after each and every experience. Like, the very last time I did it, I was still, like, barely able to walk, and I had to pee so bad that I had to just do my best to get to the bathroom. No, none of the, I think the professionals were helping other people because I couldn't see anybody. I was hoping I could maybe get someone to stabilize me while I was walking there, but I was able to get there luckily. And so that was the biggest reason why I stopped. I don't know if that's the experience of other people. I kind of have heard that it might be because your body is just so relaxed. I feel like it's more than that. I feel like because when I process through trauma, I tend to pee things out a lot. Like when I'm going through a really traumatic event, that's how I process out things. And so maybe I am different that way. I don't know. It's not something I've heard of happening to a lot of other people. So anyway, I think that's it for now. I will share about my K-hole experience because it was pretty crazy, and I guess there's not a lot to tell about it, but I just wanted this video to be about my general experience and why I decided to do it and kind of what made me stop doing it. So I hope you enjoyed my story, and okay, I will talk to you later. Bye.